The idea of family is as old as humankind. The Christmas story, which was read, probably an unusual story to be read in the middle of August, the Christmas story that was read this morning as our gospel lesson identifies Jesus' family as kind of a nuclear family, mom, dad, and the kid. And as I was thinking about that, this is not an uncommon image, because Egypt and Egyptian theology has the same kind of an image of mom, dad, and the kid whenever it talks about Isis, Osiris, and Horus. I can remember seeing the images of those three and hieroglyphs in Egypt that were there, had been there for 5,000 years, and I realized that that was the Holy Family, the nuclear family, the family of God. The scriptures make reference to that nuclear family as well as the larger family as witnessed in the life of the church, and locally as well as worldwide. There were families before there was language or laws. The family was the first institution. When human beings discovered each other, they banded together into family groups. Though our groupings are much more sophisticated, we also have this desire for banding together in families. Originally, human beings banded together for survival and for safety. This is still a factor for family groupings, but when we are more refined in our characteristics of the family than they were maybe even a generation or two ago, a family is where experience comes together and an individual looks for caring relationships, the development of the individual person. Family is what we hearken back to from the first moments of our memories of life. Our families mold our impressions of how the world should function, how the world should care for us, what is real, what is worthwhile, fairness, equality. The family was the first institution. The family still is a primary institution of a human being. A family is a group of people bonded together by blood, marriage, or adoption, or some other common bond or agreement. The traditional family of mom, dad, and the kids still is the usual image we think of when we think of family. But there are other models of family which exist in the world. Sometimes the common bond for a family is economics. Sometimes it's culture. Sometimes it's a matter of convenience, or a myriad of other possibilities. Remember the movie You've Got Mail? Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, starring again in the remake of Sleepless in Seattle. This time the scene is in New York City. Tom Hanks is a family, has a big conglomerate bookstore. And Meg Ryan's family had been in this little shop around the corner bookstore for 2 generations. Well, as luck would have it, Tom Hanks came into the bookstore with 2 children. Meg Ryan's character obviously thought that they were his children. As it turns out, the 9-year-old girl was his aunt, because she was the daughter of his grandfather. The 4-year-old boy was his brother, because he was the son of his father. A little complicated, but not so uncommon. Ideally, most people have a positive image of what family is and how it should function, even if our own families don't seem to be that idealistic. In fact, I have a theory that all families are sort of dysfunctional. Such has probably always been the case, though customs and culture dictate ideals different from ours. Wealthy medieval European families customarily swapped their children or farmed them out to other wealthy families. Under the roof of the children would learn how to work better with other families, and they learned such things as manners at the hands of another family. The fact of the matter was, this was a convenient way of, number one, getting rid of your kids and getting in hired help to take care of your needs, your household. Other cultures, even today, sell children into slavery or prostitution to alleviate debt or to obtain the basics of life for themselves or for their children. Families can be counterproductive and even destructive to themselves and to individual members. So for such families, even the word itself is a very negative connotation. So family isn't altogether all that positive for all of us. And while we like to think of the positive side, sometimes the negatives come up for us. Milton Berle, comedian, had a number of one-liners on family. One of them was, the reason grandparents and grandchildren get along so well is because they have a common enemy. My brother-in-law likes to fix things around the house, like drinks and sandwiches. My brother-in-law is a fast eater. I've seen him eat a minute steak in 12 seconds. Two sisters have been fighting all their lives, feuding all their lives. One day, Mary became ill, so she called Tessie over and said, Tessie, I want to let you know something. If I die, you are forgiven for all that you've done to me. But if I get well, things remain just like they are. Several years ago, the singing group Sister Sledge had a great hit on the musical market called We Are Family. You remember that one? It was a rousing song that instills in the listener the feeling of wholeness and acceptance, of belonging. The city of Pittsburgh adopted this song, and all of its professional athletic groups took it on as their theme song for that period of time. We Are Family was sung by all Pittsburgh professional athletic teams, and on important occasions they would show up in mass to each other's events and sing that song as being part of that family of Pittsburgh. We Are Family can be our theme song for each of us as we think about our individual families. The prototype of the family is highlighted in the gospel lesson for today. It's an image of the ideal family. Mary, Joseph, and Jesus, the Holy Family, Mother, Father, Son. Beginning of the process of creation as if theirs were the first family ever to do so. That's exactly how each one of us feels, isn't it? We're beginning something that nobody else has ever done before, and it's unique. Through thick and thin, our primary family has the responsibility and the possibility of surviving all kinds of disaster and trauma. This is because of our initial truth that we believe about the family and what it stands for. It's a place of safety and survival. It's a place of caring relationships. It's a place where we can express ourselves and grow into our potential. Blood is thicker than water is more than just a folksy saying. It's a matter of truth. As with other families, Jesus apparently did not enjoy such a great relationship with his own family, particularly as he was growing into his adulthood. We can only speculate why this may have been. There may be a number of instances recorded in the Bible that point to the fact that he didn't always get along well with everybody in his family, his brothers and sisters, his mother. It's been suggested that it's because they didn't particularly like or appreciate his ministry and thought maybe he was a little off the edge. Or maybe because he was the eldest son and he had the responsibility of taking care of his mother as well as the rest of the family. That's the way it was in those days. For whatever reason, Jesus made statements like this: "Who is my mother, my brothers?" And then pointing to the disciples, he said, "Here is my mother and my brothers, my sisters. Whoever does the will of God, they are my family." Another time Jesus said, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own hometown or in his own family." Yet despite all of this, when push came to shove and Jesus was hanging on the cross, who was it? It was at the foot of his cross, but his mother. And Jesus recognized her and gave her another son in the form of his best friend John. It was a social security system for the day, but still Jesus felt a compassion for his mother and married his best friend John to her, that he would take care of her. Married isn't the right word, but you understand, coming together. The act alone demonstrated Jesus' concern for a family relationship, and it was never quite broken. We can all experience that same kind of esprit de corps in our own families. We look for it, we need it, and even though we may not call upon it, we know it's there. We know that if we got a telephone call and family needed us, we would go. We Are Family can be our theme song as we think about our church family. The same dynamic is at work in our individual families is at work in our church family, including the possibilities for safety and survival, caring relationships, developing our faith journey of who we are as individuals, developing our potential. The church family can be a laboratory of love. This year we voted to become an open and affirming church. That's what we're talking about here, about being open and affirming, celebrating life together, accepting all of us together for safety and survival, caring, loving. The church family also brings with it the potential for infighting and backbiting, jealousy, rumors, cliques, and arguments. Why should we be surprised to find this in the church? Because we're dealing with basically with human relationships in our church. So here we are. The main point concerning the positive and negative traits of life within the life of the family of their church is not that we have them, positive and negative, but that we live through them. We work through them. We develop ourselves through them, just as we do with our individual families. In most cases, we just don't walk away from our families. We may not speak to each other for a while. We may have bad feelings, but we still stick together. Without understanding the human potential of the church family, complete with its positive and negative aspects, we tend to want to cling to the positive, cling to the warm, fuzzy feelings that we might have on Christmas Eve or on Easter morning. Sure, that's the fun time. Those are the positive times. We want to reject the negative side, and hence when the negative elements surface or become too much for us, especially when they are directed toward us, the tendency may be to leave, to divorce ourselves from our church family. Who wants it? Who needs it? Been there, done that. Those who have been members of a church for a number of years can appreciate the quality of a church family relationship as you witness both the positive and the negative, living side by side, working it out, figuring it out, developing together. Finding a balance between the positive and the negative. That's part of the advantage of living in one place for a long time or being married for a long time. For an extended period of time, to find the balance, we can experience balance between the various sides of life in our individual families as well as in the church family. There's a unique appreciation for newcomers who come into a church family. How many times we have heard what a warm feeling people have and a welcoming feeling they have as they come to our church for the first time. Sometimes we don't have that appreciation that a newcomer does. I remember Jean and Kathleen Klosserhoff joined the church in Michigan. Their lifestyle was that they moved a lot because of Jean's work. He was a troubleshooter for a major corporation in our country. And so he would move into an area, troubleshoot for a period of about 3 years, and move on to the next location. And that's about how long they were in Mount Clemens, about 3 years. We had a rule in Mount Clemens that gosh, you had to be a part of the church for a while before you got into the power structure. Well, Gene and Kathleen helped us to break that mold, because they would be gone in 3 years. If we didn't use their time and talents while they were there, we wouldn't use them at all. And so we broke the mold while they were there. They helped us to do that. They were very active in the church. Because the church for them provided a ready-made family. One of the first things they did when they moved into a community was to find a church to which they could relate. Delve in, dive in, get involved in that church, and become a part of that. And that was their family life while they lived in the various communities. The church became their family. The church was their family. There was no other choice for them. Another new member once told me that she made more contacts in 1 year at church than she had in the previous 10 years of living in that community. We play a vital role in the lives of each other. We play a vital role within the lives of each other on the worldwide basis of our church family. We were walking through the courtyard of Edinburgh Theological Seminary in Edinburgh, Scotland, and shortly a man passed us carrying a briefcase. I approached him and asked him if he were part of the faculty. He said, "No, I'm a retired minister. I'm here doing some continuing education. This was my seminary when I went to school." And that began a more than 2-hour conversation, extending over coffee and lunch, as we delved into a wide variety of topics relating to the church. We had a common ground, a common bond. We didn't know each other. I don't even remember his name. I'm sure he doesn't remember mine. We had that common bond because we were part of the church, the wide church, the body of Christ. "We Are Family" can be the theme song of the world. In 1973, I was representative to the United Church Board for World Ministries. We had a different setup in those days, and I was on that board for a while. The meeting was in New York City. The theme for that year was simply one word: ecumenopolis. It caused many questions to be asked as delegates sported their ecumenopolis pins as they walked through the lobbies and down the street. What does it mean? How do you pronounce it? Ecumenopolis is made up of 2 Greek words meaning world city. World city, ecumenopolis. I think that'd be a great theme for a presidential candidate, personally. The implications of ecumenopolis are far-reaching. Imagine how much of the world has shrunk in the last 40 years since 1973 because of communication and transportation, all of our technology that we have available today. There was a big fuss because we couldn't, not everybody could get the Olympics direct now. Remember that? We had to wait till 7 o'clock at night to get the highlights. Communication. Many advances over the last 40 years. What happens on the other side of the world affects us immediately. Our neighbors are not just the Canadians and the Mexicans, but also the Chinese and the Afghans and the Australians. For safety and survival, caring relationships, the development of each nation, we are more and more interdependent on every country in the world. The 30th Olympiad, Summer Olympics, are upon us. In fact, they are almost over. These games provide a forum every 4 years in which representatives from as many of the nations of the world who choose to do so can participate. The best athletes in the world come together at these games. In many ways, the playing fields are level. The smallest nations can compete with the superpowers. Jamaica, Kenya, Ethiopia can successfully compete against the United States and Great Britain and Russia. We saw some of that just this week. These games provide a forum for competition, but also for cooperation and congratulations. National pride is demonstrated by the athletes who win this gold and silver and bronze, who stand on the platforms and are given those medals, and the national anthems are played. Words of the anthems are mouthed, and tears flow, and hugs and handshakes all around. When our individual heroes, our individual teams of our country are able to stand on those platforms, we have a sense of pride about that. These games also provide a microcosm of what the ecumenopolis can be. They provide an example of what living together in a world city with a world family can be like. Of all the biblical writers, Paul had for his time, a fantastic worldview. And if it weren't for Paul, the Christianity probably would have remained a sect of Judaism and remained in the, maybe even died out. Paul had a worldview that was very large for his day, but by our standards, even elementary school students have a much broader worldview of what's in the world. Where is the world? The world is round or pear-shaped. It isn't flat, as it was in Paul's day. Well, he exhorted the Jews to break out of their limited world, and he implored the Greeks to look inward to this new movement. The possibilities of a world unity in the Jew, Jesus. If Paul were alive today, I can see him at work in the political, economic, and social arenas attempting to bring about world peace. Imagine that Paul is such a present champion of peace, and listen to the words of wisdom that he wrote for the ecumenopolis of his day and ours. We heard it read this morning as part of our epistle lesson. Now in Christ Jesus, you who once were far off have now brought near the blood of Christ. For he is our peace, who has made us both one and has broken down the dividing wall of hostility. And he came and preached peace to those who were near. For through him we both have access in one Spirit of the Father. So then you are no longer strangers and sojourners, but are fellow citizens. Imagine thinking about being a citizen of the world in Paul's day. In some ways, we are closer to merging the peoples of the world into a world city, an ecumenopolis, into a world family as ever in the history of the world. But then we reflect on the last 40 years and how we ended our time in Vietnam, drew a line in the sand with Iraq, withstood 9/11, invaded Afghanistan, and now are sitting on the edge of our seats about Syria. We've got a long way to go for that ecumenopolis, that world city. Paul's words are truer now than ever. We are no longer strangers and sojourners, but we are fellow citizens of the world.